are going to be talking in the next 45 minutes about the hallmarks of self-publishing success. On my right, we have Rachel Abbott. Rachel self-published her first novel back in 2011. And after 3 months, it's hit the #1 spot on Amazon Kindle store, where everybody wants to be, and it stayed there for 4 weeks. She has just released her third novel, and she's going to be talking to you about that, I know. And on my left, we have Courtney, who is the author of 6 novels, a regular commentator on TV. You may have seen her before, and radio, heard her before. And her latest novel, she's going to tell you about also, Feral Youth, was based on the recent London riots. We're going to start with Rachel, and I suppose it's a really interesting sort of topic, the hallmarks of self-publishing success, because maybe everybody in this room is going to define success differently. So first of all, how do you define success?
So I think success means different things to different people. For some people, it's the number of people who read their books. For other people, it's all about critical success. It's more about the quality of the read and whether people have enjoyed what they've read. And then there's commercial success, which kind of combines all of those. Generally speaking, you have to work very hard if you're going to make a commercial success. And I do think a plan is really important. When I launched Only the Innocent, I had no plan. And I didn't really think anything about it. I'd put my book up there and I was excited when 2 people bought it. And then I got my business hat on and I started to think a bit more about it. And I started to write a marketing plan. Basically, my marketing plan was broken down into 4 different sections. The first thing then in my marketing plan was, how do I raise awareness? How do I let people know that my book exists? So how are you going to raise that awareness? How many places can you put the cover of your book so that people see it and think, after a few times, I've seen that before somewhere. So you're creating that awareness. If you're tweeting about your book, put a picture on it. Put it onto Facebook. Think about all the different places, on blogs, on guest blogs, on other people's, everywhere you can, stick that book cover. So you're raising awareness, and it's all about visibility and discoverability. I don't know whether you want to chip in at any point here. Do feel free.
I might turn to Polly on marketing, because Polly has experience of both trade publishing and author publishing her own work. And I'd like to kind of pick up on the marketing talk and discuss whether there are differences between the way you promote a book when you've done it yourself.
There are definitely differences between the way that we as independent or self-publishers market our books and the way that the trade publishers will market our books. Primarily, we market directly to the readers and the people that we hope will read our books, whereas traditional publishers, well, my experience of their marketing was very much that they market to the booksellers, the W.H. Smiths and the Waterstones, or they did. And they do that to varying extents, and actually sometimes an author is lucky and they get a lot of that, and therefore their books are put in those big promotional blocks by the door of Waterstones. More often than not, it's kind of a conversation that happens between the publisher, the sales rep in the publishing house, and the W.H. Smith buyer. And if you're lucky, then they stock a few copies. So it's a lot more kind of all or nothing with that. Either you get it in W.H. Smith, which for one of my titles we did, and it made a massive difference on sales, or you're unlucky and the conversations don't go anywhere and you almost get no visibility. Whereas at least I think when you market direct to readers, you know that, if you get retweets, then people are into what you're doing, and then that might filter down to a purchase at some stage.
What social media has allowed, and it of course it hasn't just allowed it for those of us who self-publish, it's allowed it for all writers, is that direct connection. And what I also love is the fact that you can build it over time. The old system was very much a one-shot thing. You got your opportunity, and if you did well, you did very well. But if you didn't do well in that moment, it was kind of all over, and there was no point in you Facebooking and tweeting, because the book wasn't going to be there on the bookshelf. Now we've got the long tail with ebooks and print on demand. Your book is always there, so you're building over time. It's more like an ordinary business. It's more like reaching customers one at a time, hand selling at first, and waiting for, then sooner or later, I think you'll both agree with me, a bit of momentum comes in that you haven't actually really had to scrape for, and something takes off.
Yeah, that's
Is that
very
your
true.
experience, Rachel?
Yes, it is. So once you've actually built this awareness, and what Polly was talking about is very much about awareness as well, doing it through PR. That's actually quite hard. She's very good at it, but it is actually very hard.
I think it depends on the sort of book mainly. I'm lucky that I have themes that I tend to write about that are quite contemporary and real, whereas if you're writing about pixies in the woodland, then there's not often stories on CNN about that, but you might be lucky.
So but if you can't get the PR angle, then you have to raise awareness in other ways. Once you've actually raised that awareness, the next thing you need to do is to grab people's interest. So what is it that's going to interest them? They need to be able to see what you're offering, and probably all they'll see is the jacket, the title, and maybe a shoutline if there is one. And that's about all they've got to go on. And somehow or other, you've got to make sure that that says everything it possibly can do about your book. Because once you've got their interest, you then need to create the desire to buy that book. So when you're writing your plan, you need to think about all of these as separate sections: how to raise awareness, how to maximize the interest, and then how to make it desire. If they go through to your Amazon page or your Kobo page, when they get there, what are they going to see? Are they going to see a proper, decent blurb about your book, nicely formatted so that it looks good? Are they going to see lots of reviews? I think Polly's going to talk about reviews in a little while. How are you going to get those reviews in advance? These are all the things that need to go into your plan. And then the final stage of that is the action. What action do people have to take in order to buy your book? The worst thing I've ever seen is somebody sending people to a website. They've built up all this interest and the desire. You go to the website and it says, if you go to Amazon and search on this, you'll find my book. You know, it's so easy to put a link in. Make sure that people can get straight to your book as quickly and easily as possible in as many different places as they can, so that they can take the action that actually means that they've bought your book.
It really is the key. They are the steps. No matter what your definition of success is, they are the steps you're going to have to follow. But one of the hallmarks of success, obviously, for any book is customer reviews now. This is also something new in the book space. So, Polly, I know you want to talk about reviews.
The best thing you can do for promoting and getting those reviews is not trying to break into that kind of that inner circle where you get to know the independent book, as in the independent newspaper books editor, which is kind of what you would have to do in order to get a review in the Independent. Tell people honest reviews. That's what you want, honest reviews. Obviously, if someone absolutely hates it, it would be better if they didn't post it at all. But, generally, if someone absolutely hates it, they will hate it for a reason. And if they're a sensible, rational human being, they will put their reasons for not disliking it, which actually can be as useful as a good review, because it will put off more people who are like those people who didn't like it. The other thing you can do is actually send out free copies, particularly ebook copies, to people you don't know. Be very careful about doing this. Make sure you only approach people who you genuinely do think will like your book, judged on what they have reviewed elsewhere. So do not, if someone says, I only read non-fiction, and you can see that from their list, don't send them a novel. They just won't like it, and they will be very angry, and you wouldn't like it if your inbox was filled up with that sort of thing. So you can do that in order to branch out. But honestly, the best way is just starting with the people who you know and who genuinely loved your book. There are all sorts of avenues, and I do think that the benefit of being independent and having your rights, you can do what you want with this content, this book, is you can explore those things. So actually, it might not be the promotion that you kind of go all out and do something different with, but it might be the content itself, it might be the format, it might be the pricing. You can flex the pricing right down to zero. So there's all sorts that you can do, and for me, that's the beauty of being in control.
Just to talk a little bit about your latest novel, and when you were thinking about making it a success, what's the key thing you did, do you think, that actually worked? And secondly, do you look at other people that you consider to be successful, and do you emulate them? Do you keep an eye on the competition, as it were?
Well, I'll start with that one because that's the easier one to answer. So yes, obviously, I think everybody looks at what anybody else is doing, and if they've had a good idea and you can see what it is, you can look at how you could use the same idea. So I would be lying if I said I didn't do that. I think everybody does, but I look at marketing of lots of products, not just books, to see how different people use marketing techniques. So that's really, I think, a no-brainer. I think everybody has to just look at how other people have done it as well. And I also do take quite a lot of time to keep in touch with readers. I mean, that's what really makes it for me. I get a lot of emails and a lot of tweets from readers, and I do try to keep in touch with them and make contact with them. And so they become very supportive and they write reviews. And so I built up a lot of reviews very quickly not from friends and family. They gave up after the first one. You know, they've done their stint. So this is now real readers, and it's brilliant. And it is through having that contact and keeping in touch with those people that I think has made a massive difference.
My latest novel, I think the key thing that I did there that I think really helped, and I would encourage anyone to do if they can, is to get people involved right from the start. And I mean before you even start writing the book. For me, it was a novel that I had to do a lot of research for, because it's written from the perspective of an angry, disenfranchised 15-year-old girl who ends up getting involved in the riots. And obviously I am not that girl.
No.
So I got involved with a lot of schools and charities and youth schemes and youth clubs, and just spent a lot of time kind of hanging out on doing workshops with young people and talking to the teachers and police and kind of people who were involved with them, and all sorts of things that effectively, and I don't think I consciously realised this at the time, but what it did was not just shape the book and make it, I think, a lot better, but it actually gave me a network of people who were really behind the book all the way along, and they were keeping in touch with me, and I'd let them know how I was getting on. And when publication day came, they came to the book launch and they told everyone about it. So that actually really helped, and that was not a kind of marketing ploy from the start. I needed those people to help shape the book, and I was very fortunate that they gave their time. So yeah, I think getting people involved from a very early stage was key for that one. And as for keeping an eye on the kind of competition, which I don't see anyone as competition, because I think there's always enough hours in the day to read similar books to people. So I think actually it's good if there's someone who writes similar things. So I think I just keep a general eye on what people are doing. And as Rachel said, not just in books, but, marketing and products, and also kind of those parallel industries, what's happening in music, because they're a few years ahead of us, to be honest, and film and gaming, because there are so many parallels, and actually what works in one industry can often work in ours, even if the big publishers haven't tried it yet.
I think that's a really good point, because I think what we're looking at now is creative success. It's creativity that is firing the changes in all these business and all these industries, and we're very, very used to defining commercial success, and we're not at all used to defining creative success for ourselves or in others. And I think looking at other industries and what are the commonalities across the entertainment business is a really worthwhile thing for writers to do. Okay, does anybody have a very pressing question they'd like to ask either of our authors? I will take the microphone down.
When you submit your book on all the very digital sites, you've got a very
Could I borrow that?
limited amount of space to be able to sell your book in the description. I found it quite easy to write my book, but when it comes to summarizing the plot and making it exciting in 100 or 200 or 300 words, that proves a real challenge. Have you got any tips on what you should say in that sort of description to really hook potential buyers and reviewers?
I think it needs to have a really strong hook. You need to start it off with something that's going to grab people's attention. Just even a one-liner, almost like a shout line, something that's going to say, "Ooh, this looks interesting." And then keep it on point, really. Just keep to the point. Don't give too much. You can't give too much away, but you need to give enough that people are going to want to, that they think, well, this looks really interesting. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but also the layout of it matters a lot. Somebody sent me through an email the other day saying, why is nobody interested in my book? Which I thought was a bit tricky, really, and not something I felt at all able to answer. But one thing I did say is your product description is just one block of paragraph. It's just one paragraph. There's no standout lines. There's no line that's got a bit of boldface or a bit, there's lots of things you can do to make it look better, space it better, and make some short, sharp sentences that make people think, ooh, well, it depends on the sort of book, of course. I write thrillers, so, it depends on what kind of book it is to how you would want to write that. But you can also, within the product description section, you can put some extracts of reviews. So if you've got a few really good one-line extracts from reviews, you can put those in as well, and people see them then without having to scroll all the way through.
Polly?
Yeah, and I completely echo that. And the other thing I'd say is that we don't have to do all these things ourselves. And I really encourage anyone who's heard me speak before has probably heard me say this before, but collaborate with other people. And that might well mean getting someone else to write your blurb. Marketing people are great at writing blurb because they can condense something down to a soundbite or a message, and that's effectively what you're doing. And if you are someone who actually likes to write in long paragraphs, maybe you're not the best person to write your blurb.
Yes,
and there's
good
no
point.
shame in collaborating.
What's the most helpful way that each of you has failed?
Right, I'm clearly very aware of my many failures. First one that springs to mind is the first edition of my first book, for various reasons, it was all done in a bit of a rush, had a terrible cover, and that was the biggest mistake. I mean, it sold really well, and I always think, oh God, what would it have sold if it had actually got a good cover? I mean, anyone who Googles it will see. I'm not going to tell you about it. It was just, it was amateurish. And again, collaborate. You know, since then, I've collaborated with an amazing book cover designer, and I know there's you can look on ALLi now. Yep. So anyone who is thinking, well, where on earth do I get these good book cover designers? I mean, yes, one manual way is going around bookshop and turning books over and seeing who designed them, and sometimes they'll be people who might be sort of based in this country and not too expensive. But I think probably the best way is going on the Alliance of Independent Authors and looking at the ones that are listed there.
So I absolutely agree about the cover. But I was quite lucky in the person that did my covers for me. But I would say the biggest mistake I made was Only the Innocent, the first version, wasn't edited. It is now, but it wasn't. It was proofread, but it wasn't properly edited. It wasn't structurally edited. It wasn't, and I would never, ever, ever launch a book now without having a proper editing process.
But I think the really important thing to say about this is that it's okay to make a mistake, and that this business is very much about, I mean, again, it's different. In the old way, that was your book. It was set in stone. There was nothing you could do. Most of us, I would say, especially when we're starting out, publish too soon. We're too excited. We think it's finished before it's finished. Or we jump the editing phase, or we don't, we make mistakes. But the great thing is we can go back and fix those mistakes. So if you haven't edited your book, or if in my case your review tells you that the editor who did your proofread didn't proofread it very well, you can actually go back in and get it done again. And that's really, really fantastic. The review will always be there, but the book is as good as it can be.
I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about blog tours in terms of a marketing technique, because most of us won't have the chance to be able to whiz around the country.
I haven't ever done an actual blog tour. I do quite a lot. I don't have my own blog, so I do absolutely see the value in using other people's blogs, particularly ones that are kind of the right genre, where they kind of are always up for guest blog posts. But I'm a bit more ad hoc, and maybe it's because of the genre that I write in, so it's not a sort of a chick lit one, so I can't do a chick lit blog tour. But I think guest blog posting is a great thing. Don't know about touring, whether that's an enhanced benefit.
So my answer's pretty much the same, to be honest. I do have a blog, and I do have guest bloggers on my blog, which is always really interesting because that brings other people to the blog as well. And I do write guest posts, and I contact people to see if they'd like to do interviews, but I don't actually do a blog tour where, it's just every day you're appearing. Some people have said that they're absolutely essential and everybody should do one, but I have to say I never have, so I can't really tell you how successful they are.
I can comment just from a number of our members who have used blog tours, and I think 2 years ago or so, it was a very, very successful operation. It was a very good thing to do. They're horrendously hard work because you've got to get, for those of you who don't know, essentially you're doing your book tour, but you're doing it online, and you've got to get lots and lots of different posts about your book, pulling on all the different themes, get them all together, get them, links back to your book and everything. It's a lot of work. So there are now companies who will do it for you. And they're quite expensive because it is very time consuming, so anything that takes a lot of labor is always expensive. And I'm unconvinced at this point that they are worth the money. And it will be your decision as to whether they're worth the time.
My question is, it's just you've done both digital and hard copy publishing. I've gone to every seminar of today, and there was one about agents and getting an agent. I don't. Is it more important from digital? Did you find that you had more success from your digital publications? You know, not having a middleman, not having someone that can do it for you.
Okay, wow, that's how long have you got? Well, the first thing I'd say, I don't know if did you all hear the question about the kind of ebook versus paperback, but I actually think there's two questions in there. So you were talking ebook and paperback. In fact, I've always had, well, since ebooks have existed, ebook and paperback, but my experience has been to shift from self-publishing to traditional publishing back to self-publishing, and for each of them I have ebook and paperback. So it's not so much about the format, but I imagine what you mean is being within the kind of the contractual deal of a publisher where they were effectively owning the rights to publishing my those books in both formats. Was it better or worse? And interesting that you asked about when you described it as when they did the proper promotion. There's a big myth that when you're with a traditional publisher, you have all the promotion kind of laid on for you, and you just can sit back and write the next book. Unfortunately, unless you are already Zadie Smith or Kate Moss with an E, or probably without, you don't get that all laid on for you, and you will end up doing all the work yourself anyway. So yes, they might be able to exploit use their contacts. So they might be able to say, hey, books editor at the Daily Mail, do you want to review this? And you might get a review there, but apart from that, you won't get much from them. You won't probably get posters on the tube, and you won't get, those billboard things. It just doesn't happen anymore. You'll notice that there are still billboards with books on, but they're all big names who were from the kind of legacy era where there were only 1,000 titles published each year, and they were the chosen ones. Now it's 100,000. So you still have to do all the promotion yourself. And actually, when you're in control of the whole package, i.e., what your book looks like, what it's called, what's inside it, then it's a lot easier to stand behind it and go, hello, not hello, buy my book, but hello, this is what I stand for. Do you like what you see, kind of thing. When I was with HarperCollins and they were putting out my books looking like kind of very cheap airport chick lit, I couldn't very well stand up and say to The Guardian, hey, I want to write a hard-hitting piece about lads mags and the impact they have on society, because it looked like trash. So actually that proper marketing is a bit of a misnomer.
And Polly and I have spoken about this before. My experience was exactly the same with Penguin. I was completely, I believe, missold. I wasn't allowed, despite the fact that I had worked in media and publishing for almost 20 years at that stage and worked as a literary agent, I wasn't allowed into the marketing meeting. Cover was changed from my concept, title was changed, everything, and I essentially believe they made a massive mistake with my book, which is why I'm now self-publishing. I did a second book with them and a similar sort of experience. So, but both of us, when we got those contracts, thought, wow, it's all over now, we can relax. No, sorry. Okay, one more question.
I want to talk about hallmarks of success, and by the number of Amazon reviews, the excellent number of Amazon reviews, more than 50 that I've got for my debut novel, I'm successful. But if you look at the sales, I've actually got very, very few. So how can I translate those excellent reviews? I guess the question mainly for Polly, how can I translate that large number of good reviews into more sales?
Rachel, do you want to take this one first?
Okay, so what are you doing to let people know that your book is there? What do you actually do yourself to promote your book other than having the reviews? Sorry, I should have forgot about the...
blogging and tweeting, and practically nobody follows my blog, but I've got over 3,000 Twitter followers.
Right.
That's about all. I had one review in a newspaper, that was a while ago. I've done some radio, and that's about it.
So your blog, you've said you've not got very many people interested in your blog. Do you have any guests? Do you invite other authors to come?
Yes, I have done, yes.
So because often they will bring with them their followers as well, because they will tweet about it. So they'll come and have a look, and then that raises interest. without actually sitting down and going through with you every single thing that you do, it's quite difficult to come up with a solution.
Yeah, I know it's a very specific question, perhaps. So
One thing I would tell you to look at, and this is something for everybody to think about, if your book is not succeeding, think about metadata. Is it in the right category? Are you sure it's in the right category?
That's a really good point, actually.
And all the other keywords and everything. I don't understand how a book with that many excellent reviews, I don't understand how a book that is that successful, because to get that many fantastic reviews, it cannot be selling in a way without something being wrong at the metadata level, I imagine. Yeah.
And the categories, you need to delve as deeply down the categories as you can. Again, with Only the Innocent, I just stuck it in the thriller category. But to become visible in the charts for the thriller category, you've got to have sold a lot of books. And if you delve down deeper into the categories, you can get it so that it becomes more visible.
I just want to finish by asking each of our authors, what's your definition of success? Personal, out there, give us.
Okay, so for me, commercial success is important because I write full time, so it's my job. So it does have to pay its way. But I do think that for me, the real buzz comes from hearing from readers and hearing that they've really enjoyed my books and when's the next one due. That's a bit of a pressure, but you know, so it's a bit of a worry because they seem to think that the next one is just ready to be hatched, you know, just very quickly, which is not the case. But you know, that's what really makes me feel that successful, when people write to me and say, I really loved your book. There's nothing better.
Fantastic. Polly? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry to be similar, but yeah, it is. My definition of success is just changing one person's mind. And when I get an email to say, I read your book about Lads Mag, and it's actually made me think, and I changed the way I look at people now, then that's success, even if it's just one. There's a few more than one, but...
So I would encourage you all to go away, and before you write another word, write 2 sentences that sum up your definition of success. In 2 years' time, if you're to wake up with a big fat smile on your face saying, I am a successful indie author, what does that look like? And how are you going to make it happen? Rachel's given you the steps. You know the definition. Go. I want to thank Rachel and Polly so much for a fantastic presentation.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Orna.